All right, Shalom. I want to start off by giving our praise, honor, and glory. Nutia Hawa, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakodash. I'd like to give double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who I learned this truth from. And I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. And today is Monday, November 3rd, 2025, Missile Monday. Just like and have this article from the Korean Times, and it says just the threat of U.S. nuclear testing is bad enough. So I'm just going to go into this article and bring out a few scriptures. Lord willing, this lesson is edifying and straight to the point. And it says, just as nuclear war and all its sheer insanity has returned to Hollywood and public attention, the leaders of the world's two atomic superpowers seem to have just as nuclear war and all its sheer insanity has returned to Hollywood and public attention, the leaders of the world's two atomic superpowers seem to be doing their best to make the jitters worse. First, Russian President Vladimir Putin, who's been breaking nuclear taboos for at least 3 years, boasted about a newish torpedo drone and a nuclear-powered and possibly nuclear-armed cruise missile. Apparently, in response, President Donald Trump then posted on social media that the U.S. would immediately start testing our nuclear weapons on an equal basis. Says, leave aside on what an equal basis means, like it might mean, and just take Trump's post literally. He seems to want to start detonating nuclear warheads again, as one of his former national security advisors recommended last year. The United States last tested a live warhead in 1992. Since the 1990s, however, only one country has exploded fission bombs, North Korea, 6 times. The 8 other nuclear powers have instead abided by the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, which which 187 countries have signed. Because the U.S., Russia, China, and several others have yet to ratify the treaty, it isn't technically in force, but for 3 decades, a de facto moratorium on testing has held up. It represents one of the so-called nuclear taboos meant to preserve stability. What would happen if the U.S. started testing again? Domestically, Trump would have himself a big political problem. The explosions would presumably take place at the existing test site in Nevada. If the warheads aren't too big, the fallout of an underground detonation should be containable. Then again, Las Vegas and its sprawl have inched closer to the test site since 1992, and Nevadans and their congressional delegation would kick up a huge fuss, possibly splintering the MAGA coalition just as the midterm elections come due. Trump can't want that. Internationally, an American branch of the moratorium would liberate Russia, China, and the other nuclear powers, including Pakistan and India, to have at it too. The question then becomes who benefits most in relative terms. Jeffrey Lewis, an expert on nukes at the Middlebury Institution of International Studies at Monterey, told me that America would gain almost nothing, whereas China will leap ahead in developing its arsenal and catching up with the USS. The reason has to do with data and software to crunch it. Between 1945 and 1992, the USS tested the far Slovakia. Between 1945 and 1992, the U.S. tested by far the most warheads, a total of 1,030, not counting the ones dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, out of 2,056. So it has the most data about the physics of fission, which it can feed into its state-of-the-art algorithms to design new warheads, which then don't need testing. Russia also has a lot of data from 750 Soviet tests, but lags in crunching power. China, by contrast, only has data from 45 tests, but computing prowess that is at least equal to America's. If everyone were to start testing again, China would learn the most and advance asymmetrically. Lewis told me that's not an outcome that Trump could possibly desire. As it happens, he fired off his truth post just minutes before meeting Chinese President Xi Jinping. A presumption of testing by the big three, Lewis added, would also contribute to a general sense that nuclear weapons are here forever and an important tool for being a big state. And countries that want to be a big state should want to get in the nuclear business. That means proliferation, and these nukes won't be here forever, so that's just them saying this. Just from reading this, they clearly don't know that all of these nukes that are on the earth today are going to be used. None of them are going to be spared, So I'm just going to finish up, and then that'll be it. It says North Korea already absorbed the malignant lesson that states which give up their nuclear programs, such as Libya or Ukraine, may end up getting bombed, whereas going nuclear seems to keep countries safe. Other nations have noticed too. The worst consequence would be the least quantifiable. Daryl Kimball at the Arms Control Association in Washington told me it's the fallout of the U.S. becoming a rogue state in the system. Putin has already broken one taboo, never threatened the use of nukes. North Korea and others have chipped away at another against proliferation. China is breaching a third. Don't increase your existing arsenal. If the U.S. were now to blow up the taboo again, it's like if the U.S. were now to blow up the taboo against testing, the world will become anarchic enough that somebody, somewhere, someday might break the ultimate taboo and use nukes for the first time since 1945. And it'll happen. And just remember, as it says in the scriptures, there's an appointed time when these nukes are going to be used. All of them. It says no responsible world leader, least of all one who craves a legacy as a peacemaker, could responsibly want to take that risk. The good news is that this means that America, no matter what goes down on a truth social, probably won't resume nuclear testing. The bad news is that even if we have to talk about it. So, as it stands, number 47, he wants to resume nuclear testing, which, as it says in this article, excuse me, Slovakia, the U.S. has not detonated, a nuke since 1992, and that's 33 years ago, man. So again, if the U.S. resumes nuclear testing, Russia's going to do the same thing, and China's going to do the same thing. Because those are the main three, as it says, the big three. I'm not talking about Ford, GM, and Chrysler, man. The U.S., Russia, and China. The big three, the main three nations. That are spoken of when it comes to these nuclear weapons. Now, again, it also mentioned because there's a total of 9 nuclear armed nations, but the primary being the United States and Russia, because these are the two nations that possess the most nuclear missiles, warheads in particular. Russia has more than America, which is biblical prophecy. Why? Because Russia is going to take America down, on a small scale. And people can, deny it all they want. America's not that great country that it used to be. No one is afraid of America anymore. Because again, once America dropped those bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they had the world in fear because the world hadn't seen anything, the likes of that, And that's also biblical prophecy, man. Esau, he caused fire to rain from heaven. Slovakia. He caused fire to rain from heaven. So what, man? That put the world in fear. But then it also did what? That stirred up an arms race between the United States and Russia, during that time. And both of those countries have been testing nuclear weapons up until, the 1990s, But it's just getting, more and more amped up. You people can deny it all you want to, but World War III is coming, and you're all going to be a part of it. Regardless if you want to or not. If you get drafted, it doesn't matter. You're going to be a part of World War III if you're in America. So I'm going to leave that article in the description box, for those that want to check it out. Just going to hit a couple main points and that'll be it. I'm going to start with the book of Malachi, chapter 4, and verse 1. It says, "For behold, the day cometh that shall burn as an oven, and all the proud, yea, and all that do wickedly, shall be stubble. And the day that cometh shall burn them up, saith the Lord of hosts, that it shall leave them neither root nor branch." And right, what is that day that's coming that's going to burn as an oven? Because we've all been by an oven before, whether, just a conventional oven or, one of those old, those old style brick ovens, man, with the fire inside of it, man. We've all been by one. You could feel that heat, that fervent heat, that's coming up off of it, man. Which the word fervent, goes into extreme, man, that extreme heat. Radiating off of these ovens. What's that day that's coming? World War III, aka the day of the Lord. And it's upon us, and it's coming very soon. We know, we still have a couple prophecies that have to come to pass before that great and dreadful day of the Lord comes, the fulfillment of the mark of the beast, which is spoken of in the book of Revelation, chapter 13, verse 16 to 18. The mass implementation of the mark of the beast, which is the RFID microchip. That prophecy is here, but it's on its way, to being made mandatory. Very soon we're gonna see exactly how it plays out. But that's upon us as well. The time of Jacob's trouble, which we're in the beginning stages, which things are getting, more and more heated up, as time progresses. We're going to see what happens within these last couple months of 2025, Slovakia. But things are getting more and more intense, So now I'm going to get the book of Isaiah, chapter 9, in verse 5, and it says, "For every battle of the warrior is with confused noise, and garments rolled in blood, but this shall be with burning and fuel of fire." And right, man, this coming world war isn't going to be like how traditional warfare was fought, with hand-to-hand combat, men having different, weapons of war, swords, spears, shields, bow and arrows, these different things, fighting each other on the battlefield, man. It's not going to be like that. But as I always mention, you will have ground troops that are going to be going to war with each other, because there is going to be a draft. A lot of people, men and women, are going to be drafted to go and fight, in the Valley of Jehoshaphat, which is in the region of Slaki, which is in the region of Saudi Arabia, so they're going to be drafted to go and fight, but this war is primarily going to be fought with these nuclear weapons, Slaki is still battling this cold, man. It's just about gone, but man, oh man. So now I'm going to jump to the book of Isaiah, chapter 54 and verse 16. And it says, "Behold, I have created the smith that bloweth the coals and the fire, and that bringeth forth an instrument for his work. And I have created the waster to destroy." And right, man, who are these modern day smiths? That would be these scientists and physicists that are behind creating and developing these nuclear weapons, because that's that burning and fuel of fire that is spoken of in, Isaiah the 9th chapter, because that's how this war is primarily going to be fought, with these nuclear weapons, because what does a blacksmith do? They create weapons of war, and that's what these scientists are doing, They're not just creating any old weapons of war, they're creating weapons of mass destruction, because these nuclear weapons that are on the earth today have the literal capability of destroying the planet Earth. But as it says, the earth abideth forever, so the entire planet Earth won't be destroyed, but, America, aka Babylon the Great, will be, completely desolate. We'll see if any other lands besides the land of Israel that'll get hit. I personally believe there will. Maybe it won't be, just complete destruction, but, I believe other lands may get hit as well. But, that's just, my personal belief. I'm not saying this fact, but it would only make sense. We know the bulk of these missiles are going to hit this place, and that wasted to destroy is talking about, the nukes themselves, because again, we just had news come out last week that Russia just, it also mentioned it in this article, that Russia just, developed another missile that cannot be stopped by any defense system, and then it was like earlier this year, I forget, what month it was, but, the U.S. talking about they wanted to, pretty much update their missile defense systems, which it won't matter. They can update it all they want. Number 47 can try to, do his golden dome. It's all going to, come to naught. It's all going to fail, because it clearly says in the scriptures that, nothing is going to stop these missiles, Excuse me, Slovakia. So I'm going to get the book of Joel chapter 2, get into the main point, because this is a good chapter which gives a vivid description of the nukes, But just to give, just to back up, the statement I just made, I'm going to get the book of Joel chapter 2 and verse 7. And it says, "They shall run like mighty men. They shall climb the wall like men of war. And they shall march every one on his ways, and they shall not break their ranks." And right, man, once these missiles are launched, they're gonna be launched in their particular order. They're not gonna bump into each other and knock one out the air, or one is not gonna hit another one. It is gonna, detonate. No, that's not gonna happen. You know, verse 8, neither shall one thrust another. They shall walk everyone on his path. It's like, they shall walk everyone in his path. And when they fall upon the sword, they shall not be wounded. And right, man. So these missile defense systems is not going to work. Other missiles aren't going to bump into each other, knock each other out of the air, detonate midair, and explode. No, nothing is going to stop these nukes. Nothing. And then real quick, just to prove that this is talking about missile, just the word, sword in Joel 2:8. And it says, as you can see, Shlach, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And look what it says. Weapon, missile, sprout, but it's not a sprout. Missile, weapon. That's what it's talking about, man. Look what it says. A missile of attack. Come on, man. You can't make this up. You can't make it up. This is how you know this is going to be the end of this place, man. Because this is going to be the judgment for Babylon being taken out by way of fire, by these nuclear weapons, So coming back to the book of Isaiah, I'm going to get chapter 13. I'm going to start at verse 4. And it says, the noise of a multitude in the mountains, like as of a great people, a tumultuous noise of the kingdoms of nations gathered together. The Lord of hosts mustereth the hosts of the battle. Again, is describing the missiles, because once they're launched, man, they're going to make a great noise. You're going to hear that, rocket propulsion system, guiding these missiles. They're going to make a loud noise because there's going to be thousands upon thousands of them, being launched at the same time. Verse 5, it says they come from a far country, from the end of heaven, even the Lord and the weapons of his indignation to destroy the whole land. And right, again, referring to that nuke that Russia just created, they said that it can reach up to, I think they said 7,500 miles. If not, it was up to like 8,000 miles or something like that, between 7,000 to 8,000 miles, and it could stay in air, I think, for like 15 hours, man. So these nukes are going to be launched from one end of the earth and land at the other. So, for example, they're going to be launched from the east in Russia, and they're going to land in the west, America, man. To do what? To destroy the whole land. Because we know, pursuant to Genesis 27:40, that Esau, Edom's blessing is the sword, and, his ultimate sword being these nukes. These are really the Lord's weapons, as it says in this verse 5, man. These are the weapons of the Lord's indignation, that righteous anger, man. Why? Because he's going to destroy Babylon, taking Esau, Edom down, for the things that he has done unto the children of Israel and destroying the earth, man. Because doesn't it not, it's like it does it not say that the Lord is going to destroy those which destroy the earth? So is the Lord not going to destroy Esau with his own blessing? So it's ironic, man. The Lord gave this man the technology to take himself out, because again, those Russians are Edomites. And yes, we have our people over there. But again, just like World War I, World War II, and soon to be World War III, this is, white on white crime, because they love to point the finger at us, and say, oh, well, so-called Negroes, are the problem. We commit most of the crimes, but meanwhile, you can't name a single world war that Negroes have started. We haven't gone to war with another nation. We haven't gone to different countries and bombed them to hell and back, man. Just over there, I forget where exactly, in Germany, like in one of those fields, man. You could still see remnants of the damage that was caused during World War, I want to say 1 or 2. Or either way, both of those wars, they caused a lot of damage over there in Europe, man. But either way it goes, Esau, Edom is going to be taken down. So just going to get a couple more and that'll be it. I'm going to grab the book of Revelation, chapter 7 and verse 1. And it says, "And after these things, I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. And these are 4 literal angels holding back the 4 winds, which the 4 winds represent the destruction." Because again, there's an appointed time when these 4 angels are going to be loosed to unleash that destruction upon the earth. Verse 2, "And I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living power. And he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, saying, Hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our power in their foreheads." That's talking about the elect. The 144,000 and the 1/3. Until the elect is completely sealed, these other prophecies come to pass, then that destruction is going to come. So let me grab Revelation chapter 11 and verse 14. And it says, "The second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly." And right, we're seeing that the third woe as well on its way. So I'm going to end it with this. This is the book of Revelation chapter 9 and verse 15. It says, "And the 4 angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year, for to slay the third part of men." And right, there's a set time where the Lord is going to unleash these angels, to unleash that destruction upon the earth, which is what? World War III. There's a set time, there's a particular hour, day, month, and year when this war is going to take place. And it says to what? To slay the third part of men. Because you have 3 classes of men on the earth. You have the sons of God, which today are the biblical Israelites, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, the tribe of Judah, all the way down to the tribe of Issachar. You have the sons of men, which are the different heathen nations. And then you have the sons of the wicked, which is the nation of Edom, you so-called white people, and that's who this destruction is for. The third part of men, the wicked, the sons of the wicked, and you will have 2/3, of the nation of Israel that is going to get caught up in this destruction for their wickedness because they refuse to turn back unto the Lord. They're going to get caught up in it. And then you heathens, that are over here that weren't able to return to your homelands or able to escape America in general before that great and dreadful day, comes upon the earth. You're just collateral damage. You're just over here to make your little money and die, So, Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. I'd like to give double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are learned this truth from. And I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. Till next time I say, Shalom.